Check. 1, 2. Welcome, everyone. The Grail night, right? Anyway, cheers. I got a little Dr. Pepper drink going on. But also, of course, you know it. It's Thursday night. Got to drink up and have a little Coors Light. So cheers, everybody here. And welcome, Brandon. Welcome, Brandon. And that's some funky synth tunes. Yeah. Did someone pass gas? Norman the Love. Okay, well, as long as you confess, we got some trolls here. Great to have everybody here early. Anyway, welcome. It's the Thursday show. First sip of the day is always the best. Trust me. Went to Topeka testing my luck. If you guys have kind of been following along for the week, I have been building this episode up. And I want to talk about Grails, and I have a bunch of records set aside that I want to maybe consider or talk about. Are they Grails? I'm going to be floating between, essential records. I'll talk a little bit about deep Grails, stuff that Dom Seeking the Thread showed on his channel yesterday. So I did watch the video when I got home. So late at night. So kind of when I said Dom is lying to you guys, he put a funny twist on it. First of all, I would define every record that Dom showed on his channel yesterday as a true Grail. So it's funny how Dom said that they weren't Grails. I would be curious. Here's one of my criticisms of his video is he didn't define a Grail, or he didn't show an example of a record he thought was a Grail. So that just kind of left my head scratching, because I know some of those records, he admitted he'd paid a lot of money. It was hard to get them. I don't know that he said any of those records that he found in a bargain bin. I don't know. That's another thing that I want to drive home is, a lot of times you got to, send the email out to someone. You heard someone has this record or something. And so you send an email out or you let people know you're looking for this record. And so that's kind of one thing, we will touch up on as far as Grails are concerned. But before we go deep into it, I do want to talk about my little road trip, as I always like to talk about my road trips. They are sure fun. But, I say a lot. Forgive me. It's a live stream. I'm not perfect. One thing I like to, that's a Dom shame. Man, I don't know, man. I'm loving the puns tonight, Dave. Keep them coming. Anyone. So anyway, I will, I'll drop the StreamYard link eventually. I did mention that, if you guys want to come up here, show off some of your Grails, I would love to see that. If you guys want to judge what I got, because really, truthfully, the record, for example, the Beverly Kenny record I showed to you, a lot of you guys seeing that may have been underwhelmed. You might not be looking for those types of records. I don't think the common Beverly Kenny fan is really looking at VC videos. So, this is, like I said yesterday, Grails are to be discovered, You don't know when, and that's why I keep my head in bargain bins and keep showing you guys stuff, like these bargain bin babes, like her I've been all about. They keep me looking and interested in bargain bins, and you never know when that Grail is going to turn up. So, I have mentioned that, I embrace the bargain bin. I love cheap records. And I will show you some of these Grails I found Grails I've paid like $1 for. So that's the other thing, you want to pay as less money as possible. So I do know people who have paid very little for Grails. For example, my father found a copy of Randy Holden Population 2 with the center drilled through it. I held it in my hands and everything, and he didn't like the record, and he took his money for it. And, that's cool. I've heard people say a lot of $1,000 records aren't really worth it. A good example of that, in my opinion, Farm is not maybe like if you're gonna pay for that record, you gotta love blues rock and you gotta love the blues. And actually, I set aside some Grails, and now at some point I am gonna reach up and grab another uh, a blues album, because there's like, there's electric blues records from the 60s that I don't think people give a lot of great credit for. There's stuff on like the Delmark label, Chicago blues. And I think if stuff like that were truly more respected, you could be, some of these $100 blues records could be $200 to $300. So anyways, I'm going to go ahead and just kind of get started here now. Like I said, the Coltrane I found, A Love Supreme, first one I had seen in my life. I'd be curious to think if Dom, what his opinion on that is, being as far as being a Grail. So I mean, because he held up records, in my opinion, are more valuable than a Love Supreme. But it's just the other part of it is, you know uh do people know about the artist? And I guess really, before I kind of get really started, I will start showing you some of the records. But if the common Beatles fan, funk fan, Taylor Swift fan saw Dom's video, they would not care about any of those records. But I mentioned the Beatles and Taylor Swift. Now bear with me, guys. In a lot of ways, we have to sort of appreciate that there are two main artists that exist that can hold up the vinyl market like the Beatles can or Taylor Swift can. Because truthfully, if it weren't for these people funding the market, finding records would be tough. You know, um, I just want to credit those two artists as, you know, uh, they're two big artists. I don't know what I'm trying to say here. They're two big artists, and they both have their records that their hardcore fans are looking after. Now, not every artist has a Grail, but I do believe the Beatles have Grails, like the Butcher cover, and Taylor Swift has her Grails too. So I will kind of touch up on that here shortly. But we got Welcome Arnie Zanzibar, concert buddy overwhelmed. He found a mint copy of "You Light Up My Life." I think he might want to be buried with a Michael McDonald record in particular. Oh, I think you could probably have a garbage truck. You could bury you in a garbage truck of that record if when that day comes. So, anyways, Dave Buttocks was yucking at the old fart stream today. He's afraid of PV stealing views. I will say this. He sure gets butt hurt over the small things I do here on this channel. Getting a 300 view live stream occasionally. I don't know, man. There's a way to win and there's a way to lose while you're winning. Or anyways, how do you watch that stuff? Yeah, I've given it a shot. Or last, like the Grail episode. I mean. That's the trouble I had with that Grail episode, is they didn't really talk about Grails. And while Don made a great video, he didn't really define what a Grail was. So I don't know what that's all about, but we are kind of going to talk about that here. Anyway, I'm going to shut up. We're going to talk about the mission yesterday, because I did find three considerably great records. But then on the other hand, are they Grails? I kind of want to leave that up to you guys. But anyway, I was on the hunt yesterday. And I was dipping through to Kansas. I was going to start at Love Garden, unusually, because I usually go to Topeka first, then to Love Garden. But I thought maybe it would be good to start at Love Garden. I didn't even make it there. And I started driving down 75 onto 73, if you guys know the highway routes here. And like I mentioned, I started hitting up every thrift shop. Well, when I hit up Auburn, Nebraska, they had this thrift shop, and I'm like, hey, isn't everything here a quarter? So I dipped in there and I just started, I was 20 minutes early. Let's just chill in Auburn, Nebraska, and let's just buy everything for a quarter. So getting a copy of Luxury Liner, not a bad copy, for all this stuff here for a quarter. Can't go wrong. So Laura Nero, Sergio Mendes. Funny thing about this stuff, most of it, I'll just throw in my bargain bin at the next record show, and it'll all, I could easily turn many of these quarters into dollar bills, which is nice. So, but anyway, this was great because I mentioned, maybe a third 100 album challenge. We got 85, maybe a couple more than that, if you're counting. But we came really close, and this was just kind of by accident. But yeah, for a quarter, and I will tell you what, I do like making conversations with people in these thrift stores. I'm like, were you guys around during this time? I was asking the ladies, and I'm like, was life? I just imagine life just being like, so like were women just so depressed, sitting at a martini bar wearing a mink coat. I just imagine that's what life was like back then. But anyway, cool finding a copy of Nilsson Aerial Ballet there. This will need a bit of a clean, but I was for a quarter, taking some chances on some bargain babes. We got Miss March bargain babe, Barbara Mandrell. That's right. We had January was Lynn Anderson, February was Jackie DeShannon, and March will be Barbara Mandrell. So don't you love it here, guys? The bargain babes, how I can spin the bargain bin into something fun, as I'm looking for grails. So these were all a quarter, and Mickey Gilley, for a quarter, Tommy Dorsey, Frank Sinatra, all these in pretty good shape. So cannot go wrong. Hey, got another copy of that. So, and I was picking up all the babes out of there too. So even that one, and just interesting stuff for a quarter. Boom. Most of those, like I said, will just go to the bargain bin at the next show. But that we're 22 records into this, if you guys are keeping track. Anyway, so that was a little Catholic thrift shop in Auburn, Nebraska. And there's a place in Falls City, Nebraska. There's actually two places that I ended up finding out about, but I kind of saw on the map, oh, they got some thrift stores in Falls City, Nebraska. I'm going to tell you right now, it wasn't really worth it. But it was worth it, while I was on this particular trip, just to go check it out. And I did score some stuff, bear with me, but yeah, I did not organize these stacks, guys, bear with me. So I got one of the Topeka stacks going on here, so. But anyway, yeah, Nebraska, I hope I'm not losing everyone here. No, I feel like I'm really unorganized. Well, it's all right here. So, okay. No, this was kind of a Falls City, Nebraska, where two thrift shops, and I found everything sitting in there for $1. And, I have a feeling like the great country. This was in, I forget where, this was in Horton, Kansas, was this Dallas Frazier, which actually nice having a great copy of this because I had a beater copy of it. Found another copy of this. So here, a low discount stock, a Discog stock for this, but come Christmas time, like I said, I don't snooze on Christmas. Don't snooze on Sam and the Sham and the Pharaohs when it's in the bargain bin either. Also found another Gary Stewart. Can never really have enough Gary Stewart records. I think I always pick these off in the bargain bin. This is going to be the most common of Gary Stewart records, but great stuff. A guy, I don't think you could say, I think maybe some people might call his first album a Grail, but I still acquire his first album's not that hard to acquire. It just goes for a lot of dough online. But yeah, no, in the bargain bin, these dollar records, Chet Atkins, some Buck Owens. You guys know this made it to the Wax live stream auction once, believe it or not. This was cool to find. Miss February 2026 bargain babe Jackie DeShannon actually was holding out on a really solid copy. Was happy to find this, except for it had a little chew mark in the corner there. It's all right. The vinyl looked great, but we're gonna set this bargain babe free. Jackie, there you go. Anyway, sorry, it was getting a little. Sometimes you can look at these babes and you get a little carried away. You know what I'm talking about. Anyway, Mel Tillis, life turned her that way. So this actually is sort of not a band record, but they did change the title of this record to Life's That Way, because they thought maybe the title Life Turned Her That Way could, maybe throw some people off, or maybe it was a little too womanizing. back then. But speaking of Gary Stewart, I want to mention this. Gary Stewart was supposed to be signed to Cap Records here in the late 60s. And I believe Cap just didn't maybe find him marketable at that time. So they had Cal Smith, Mel Tillis, trying to think of other artists that were on Cap. Truthfully, anything on Cap in the mid to late 60s is great country. It would have been great to, if maybe the first Gary Stewart came out on Cap. But I do think that Gary Stewart is featured on some of these. I'm not sure about this one, but on some of those early or some of those Cap albums, you might find him as like a session musician, which is kind of cool. So anyways, sip here, one moment. Found the Roman Brothers. I don't know what this is all about. Roman, not like, Roman Coliseum or anything, but this looks like a folk record for $1. And I've always been about that, speaking of looking after grails, a lot of grails you come across, you might be shocked just looking at the cover. Like, that's a grail? Someone will pay you $800 for that record. So I pick up those private press records just off to the side with, maybe the chance that you never know. Maybe someone will discover that record one day. We'll talk about Discogs a little bit as a rule of thumb, like how many people want versus own it. But anyway, continuing with more Falls City, Nebraska finds. And a lot of these were great to find, still in the shrink. I am discovering some Connie Smith. And of course, Brenda Lee, still kind of getting into her a little bit. I am familiar with her popular albums, but the one I showed you the other day, kind of more along the lines of a jazz vocal. So that's one thing I've noticed. A lot of 60s artists sort of dabble here and there with certain things. But Norma Jean, here's another bargain bin babe. I mean, come on. Underrated as hell. So she might have to be maybe Miss May. We'll see. She's a babe in her own right. Kitty Wells. Tim's got all these in great shape. I'm just waiting for the day to buy them all for $1. Who knows? But that was $1. This was $1. Ernest Tubb Records. I'll pick up anything of his at $1. Same with Willie Nelson. Nice finding that for $1. Even as a budget, some Hank Cochran, some Don Gibson, some Chet Atkins. This is not a bad Waylon record to find in near mint for $1 in the bargain bin. This is him, I think, maybe on I don't know if this is maybe more on the Christian side. I don't remember from the last listen, but if it is, he's sure smoking a cigarette there. Anyway, I think this is like 84 on the year. And I don't know much about excuse me. Some of those later years, I'm a little bit fuzzy on. Forgive me, but and then I think lastly, Ernest Tubb, and we'll close out the country classics with the Ventures Country Classics. So nice finding all those for $1. You can still find records for $1. You can still find Hawaiian Cheesecake. Actually, that's not nearly as hard to find for $1. So anyway, yeah, those were sort of thrift shops on the way, and that was kind of like what I was thinking. Will I find a Grail at one of these thrift shops in a small city? Because sometimes that's when they pop up. But no real luck. But I will show you. Where did I put those freaking records? Here they are. So Horton, Kansas. Now, I mentioned yesterday how I met with an older lady who's working the antique shop. And I'm buying, this stack of records here. And she's like, oh, you like records? Well, I just bought a bunch. And she gave me her address, told me to go, her husband will let me in, and went and checked out the records. And it was a lot of, I don't know. So she got them from another guy who cherry picked through them. And then she cherry picked through the rest of them. So after two people have cherry picked through them, it doesn't make it easy really finding good stuff. But anyways, we got welcome here. We got Christopher Kibler. So you did the Acid Archives video on Jamie Brockett, I want to say. So, but no, great having you here. I'm going to be talking about some Grails, and I do got a little bit. I got my own Acid Archive collection right here. So I don't know. I have my collection sorted differently than a lot of other people. So, but anyway, this thrift shop. I guess I'll show you what I got, and this was great to find. I ended up just picking up all 5 of these here. These are like $5 a pop. What these are? Atlantic would do like sort of these compilations. These are kind of maybe from the early mid 70s, maybe 72, I think the year on these. But what's cool about these is these are all German presses, ironically enough. And I can kind of show you. This is Jimmy and Mama Yancey Chicago Piano. This is the first volume. The only volume that they didn't have was volume 2. But I'll kind of show you these. All near mint. Sometimes you get those German presses. I don't know if you have that feeling. Finding a freshly pressed, barely played German press. I'll find a lot of those actually, more often than not. I actually did at one point have the U.S. press of this Blind Willie McTell, and I think maybe there could be a BB King one, but I had those a long time ago and sold through those. But yeah, Blind Willie McTell, Atlanta 12 string. And then this is cool too, from Dallas to LA, Texas guitar. This is going to feature T-Bone Walker, Guitar Slim, Al King, amongst others, or Lawyer Houston. Yeah, so just kind of a nice selection of Texas blues guitar. Awesome score there. And then this is a Blues Piano Plus Chicago blues here. Some nice compilations. You'll have let's see, Floyd Dixon, Little Johnny Jones, Floyd Dixon. So you do got some repeat artists here. Little Brother Montgomery. So any names ringing the bell to you guys? And then this too, nice John Lee Hooker, Detroit Special. So this was all one booth, $5 a pop. And some of these are more valuable than others. Like I think this one, or the Blind Willie McTell does go for, a little bit more. That's always a plus. But getting the collection like that for $5 a pop, I consider that a score. At a thrift shop in Horton, Kansas, antique shop in Horton, Kansas. Anyway, also had this, Timmy Thomas. Why Can't We Live Together? This you'll see it was on Glades in the U.S. Polydor here, so we do got a German press, and I'm gonna talk about this record here. A little timeout if you guys don't mind, because I did listen to this today, and I had a copy of this. Not kidding, like within my first, I call it the first era of vinyl collecting, like when I was working at Homer's, and this came in a U.S. press, came in a collection, and I was like, I want this record. I think I was familiar enough with the song "Why Can't We Live Together," which was the hit on here. Incredible song, great, very soulful voice, Timmy Thomas. But when I had my first copy, I had a problem with this record. Now, if you're familiar with this record, he uses like a drum sampler throughout the whole record. And this is what, 72, I want to say, I think 72 on the year. And this was before I really got into hip hop. And I had this record and I liked the hit, but I think I had a weird hang up about the drum machine being used on this record. Well, I listened to it again today and I was like, you know what, this truthfully is an innovative record. Not a rare record at all, but finding a record like this in good shape, gonna be tough. Got a near mid one German press, which is very great. And then you do have a little standing out of the boxing there on the cover. Not bad, but this record in general, very innovative, groundbreaking as far as funk goes. The use of a drum machine, one of the first records to really ever do it. And that was like my problem. I don't know why I had a problem. He does all the instrumental work on here, in addition to singing. This was also co-produced by Timmy Thomas and Steve Alamo, who was kind of like an, maybe later 50s, early 60s, more of like that rock, rhythm, and blues style. Steve Alamo kind of worked with Timmy Thomas on this, but listening to this again today, I sort of, this, I think, probably 20 years in between listens in full of this record. And I did appreciate a little bit more. There are a few records. Another one I'm going to show from this trip, even that I would call precursors to hip hop. This being one of them. So Timmy Thomas, "Why Can't We Live Together?" I did listen to this again today. Not a bad record, but I do think there are people out there who would appreciate owning this more than me. But for finding it today, great find. And there you go. Also mentioned in the Kansas City video, someone, I have these great encounters at record stores, and I love telling you the stories about them. And I was in this place called Vinyl Heaven, what I would consider an overpriced store. This is the place that had Helen Reddy records for $12. And I'm like, I ain't shopping here, but there was this chance encounter of a guy who, it was a Sunday of all days. And I don't even know if he's dressed in his Sunday's best or his 9 to 5, but this is clearly a guy who's got a 9 to 5, too busy to go out and look for records. And we almost got to say, throw the Grail wrench into this one. I found this record for $5, but in Vinyl Heaven, I met a guy who told the clerk, I've been looking for this record everywhere and I can't find it. And I think I told you the story, if you guys remember. I went to the R&B section and pulled this record out for the guy and said, "Hey, you looking for this record?" And it had a $35 tag on it. But to him, that's his Grail, right? He works a 9 to 5. He don't have time to eBay and Discogs all the time, but on his weekends, he likes to go out and find records. And he really wants this. He probably grew up with this. His mom played it. He remembers all the hits, and he just needs a copy of it. Can't find it anywhere. Well, me handing that guy that record and seeing his reaction to it, I'm going to show you some records that I paid $1 for. And there are certain records, when you find them, you do get that feeling. So it is more like your Grail. But anyway, so is Helen ready? I don't know if anyone's ready for a Helen Reddy $12 record. I don't even know if people are people buying them off for $1. Anyways, but got this Anita Baker Rapture. So a Total Fox too. Speaking of the chocolate cheesecake here, I mean, yeah, I need a baker. Tell you what. Anyway, so that was a little thrift shop, Horton, Kansas. I did sort of rerouted my trip based on that, going to that lady's house, and it ended up just not being what it is, and that's kind of how things are. I think my man Dave here, who's hanging out tonight, went to an estate sale. Estate sales aren't even what they are anymore. It's like you're taking a ticket, a number, you wait in line. All 30 of the people get to, in front of you, get to touch the records first. So, anyways, you take what luck you can get, I guess. But, anyways, let's see what we can do here. I'm trying to, I think my next, so after, excuse me, after going to that old lady's house and not getting anything, I ended up going to a place called Vintage Stock, which is sort of like a DVD store, video game store, and everything store. And I think they got a Midwest chain sort of going on. But anyway, I did show you a few things. I did pick up this from Vintage Stock. Outcast ATLians. This would be their 96 album. I had an OG at one point. Is an OG a Grail? I don't know. I will be talking about some 90s records and what people consider Grails. Are there Grails for every genre? I would argue there are. Anyway, not a bad price on this, and nice having a copy. This might be my favorite Outkast record. Easily the best cover they did. But 96 was an experimental year for hip hop, and I've actually believe it or not, I've actually studied 1996 hip hop very deeply. And the reason why is there is a split in 96. And it's like 95, 96 had a sound to it. You still had a lot of heavy sampling. And then 97 broke off into a more mainstream where, like, I think maybe they were trying to, go less on sampling. Maybe they could do more with like replaying, and then therefore they don't have to clear as many samples. So in 96, though, something called space rap was a thing. And so the first Outcast was Southern Playalistic. This is the second one, right? The second Outcast. And this is a lot different. This is them on more of like a space tip, ATLians, stuff like Babylon, the song Mainstream. It's just the beats, the sort of theme that they went behind with it. There's a song on here called Extraterrestrial. So, what's great about this album, though, too? It features me and you, your mama and your mother, too. And your cousin, too. A lot of guest appearances on here. But no, space rap was sort of a weird thing. And, you talk like Dr. Octagon. And I also mentioned how it's sort of like deep diving into 96 hip hop. There's a lot of 12-inch singles that some of which are grails, go for a lot of dough. And they're just like spaced out beats made by like, the Beat Nuts or, I'm trying to think of like the Beat Miners would be a good, I'm trying to think of like the hip hop, producers who would have been all spaced out. Qbert, another one. But, it's not like something that, could really, what I think about 96 and the underground getting spaced out, Cool Keith getting spaced out, this was them just having fun, like in a last year, like, or a last, like, I don't know, a last hoorah for the golden age of hip hop is what I think of the year 96. If you take a deep dive into 96, and I do recommend DJ Premier Crooklyn Cuts, if you go look up that on YouTube, and that will give you a good overview of like, how spaced out 96 hip hop was. Anyways, also pick this up, 311 Omaha Styley. I haven't listened to this yet, but I'll throw this on at least for a nostalgic memory. Speaking of 311, now, back when I was in 7th grade, everyone in my class was allegedly related to, had a cousin was cousins with someone in 311. So just part of being from Omaha, what you would put up with running into people. But anyway, that's also at Vintage Stock. Vintage Stock also had this. Now, the Dells, What a Night. This is a sealed copy. I'm going to show you the prices they had on it. So $59.99. They had a special of $19.99. I went ahead and took them up on their special. But this was even there last summer. So I think I took my previous Topeka trip was last summer. I don't like going down to Topeka. It is about close to a 3-hour drive. But I remember they had this sitting there for $60. I'm like, I had to look this up. And it does look like in good shape, people have paid a lot of dough for this record. The Dells on VJ. And this is a sealed copy. I don't know what to do with it. And you can look this up. The Dells VJ LP-1010 if you want to look this up, anyone. But people have paid, it appears maybe someone has paid $400 for a sealed copy of this. Now, I'm considering, well, it's got this ring mark here on it. And I just sort of think it might be time to open it. What do you say, guys? Like, open it and tear the shrink off and everything. Just do it. Right here, live on the spot. All right, you got a little romantic, I don't know, you call that cheesecake or whatever, but nice cover here. We're going to set it free. There we go. Is that ring mark still? Yeah, the ring mark is still there. Once it kind of has stuff like that, I do kind of open up, set things free. But Okay, this is also interesting. Glad I opened this up because I think this will need to be added to the database on Discogs. When I looked this up, this was as a VJ maroon label, so I got a black label here. So hey, discovering things. Gosh, you also have to wonder with the VJ label, is this even legit? Because I think a lot of stuff on VJ got bootlegged, especially for like the Beatles. I imagine. I mean, it's got matrix etchings in it. I imagine this is probably an official release. I don't think anyone's bootlegging the Dells, or I don't know. But anyway, this was vintage stock. There may have been a few things. If they pop up, I'll just sort of tell you. But okay. Let me sort of wrap up the Topeka trip. I did go to a place called Top City, which I always make my way to, uh, where I found this great chocolate cheesecake, Jimmy McGriff, the Worm. I did show. I found a Jimmy McGriff record on Blue Note. I will show later here in the stream. But this actually is kind of wanting. But I didn't want to pay like an online price of $15 for it. So that was Top City. Also, to those who like the cheesecake action, Tropical Cruise. And you got a little funny, some fun action with this dude sitting right here, like, well, who's this? What's this babe up to here on this boat here? She's a foxy babe just getting a nice tan on this Tropical Cruise. I like that cover a lot. Also picked this up. This ain't a rare. This was in like the bargain, I think a $3 bin, but 33 and the Third by George Harrison. Not a particularly great one, but it sells. So also I bought my first Bobby Goldsboro record, Blue Autumn. I don't know what this is worth, but we'll give it a shot. Also, that was Top City. I like that place. Great bargain bin. And then he knows how to grade records too, which is always a plus. These came from an antique mall that's right next to a place called Time Machine, which I will talk about Time Machine, but picking up some Buck Owens and the Buck Owens Buckaroos records. These might not, this is just the Buckaroos band without Buck Owens. So found one other copy of those. Also, nice to find this. These compilations are always kind of cool. And British, Brit pop, 60s British music compilations of the Hollies. And funny thing about this compilation, whoever did it, on side one, uh, they put all the tracks like, Sorry Suzanne, Jennifer Eccles, Charlie and Fred, Dear Eloise, Carrie Ann. So any song that featured someone's name, they put on the first side there. I don't know what the rhyme or reason was behind that. Also, this 25% off at a booth. Secret Treaties. I think this is a reissue. It's got that barcode on the back. And then also, I think they were getting a little bit more pink with their coloring on maybe some of their later reissues. They had that copy of Tyranny in Mutation, which kind of has some like pink highlighting going on. But I left that one behind because I do have a few copies of that. But great record, Career of Evil, dominance and submission. And yeah, no, this is a Flaming Telepath, which features like one of my favorite lyrics, the joke's on you, which shout out to anyone who be telling jokes in the VC, but the joke's on you. I dedicate that song to you. I'm sorry, I got better things to do than make parodies. So anyways, all right, you guys will like this one. So Top City Music had a copy of this. Miles Davis, On the Corner, 1972. Killer record. I want to even say, okay, my first copy for sure. Maybe my first full listen. I probably had a CD of this long ago. But Miles Davis, On the Corner, he is really breaking some ground here for funk music. Funk music was very unique during that time. I think a lot of artists were taking influence to each other. And Miles Davis, especially here, is taking influence to Ornette Coleman. And there was the album Bitches Brew, which and to me that's a lot more avant-garde, free jazz. I think there's a very heavy Ornette Coleman influence on that record. This, I think there's like a heavy Ornette Coleman influence on this record too, but much more organized. It's got a lot more funk, which was becoming the thing in 1972 as well. So Miles kept it with the times. My first copy of On the Corner. If you guys love Psych, this is a great jazz record here. Incredible, wild, funky record. And actually, if you check the personnel on this record, a lot of jazz records will list the personnel. It is so deep on here, you couldn't really even, or you could, but the list would be very long as far as personnel goes. When I looked this up on Discogs, it gives credit, percussion credit, to the group Matume, which they weren't really like much of a group, I thought, until like the later 70s. But I guess at least maybe, I don't know if it's one member or some members that are featured on this. But Miles Davis, On the Corner, killer record. Also found a copy of this here, Bob James One. I mean, if you are going to own one Bob James record, get this. If you're going to own two, one and two, but this is going to feature Nautilus, right? I think that's how you say it, Nautilus, which was heavily sampled in hip hop, and Bob James when he was sort of like OG Press on CTI. Yeah, most Bob James records are worth $1. I will, and I have paid a little bit more for this one. But yeah, Bob James, when he started getting sampled in rap music, he kind of was like, "What the heck is going on?" And if you look at like old pictures of Bob James, like wearing sweaters and all that, he legit looks like one of the squarest dudes you will ever see. But great stuff, especially this record. This is an essential record. It looks like there could be a Grail on the cover, but it's not a Grail. So I don't know what I meant by that, but great record. And if it weren't for hip hop, I don't think anybody would give two craps about Bob James. If you watch Bob James interviews now, it is funny how he goes from this like sweater wearing, square looking guy to now that he's getting sampled in hip hop. He does sort of like, hey, I'm spending some of the sampling money to make myself look hip, and more power to you, Bob James. So anyways, so one of the old girlfriends is the Waxed. Oh, gotta be. I don't know what be going on in L.A. Some of those late nights. Anyways, James Farley, welcome, Dave. I mentioned that Mazzy. Okay, if I'm like speaking of an antiques, Maslow decided to end his Saturday live stream due to lack of interest. Okay, so okay. Be patient with me as I sort of catch up with you guys. But let's see. Mill, I saw that you had a copy of the postcard. Yes, that did land the stack. So some of you guys might be, creeping in and seeing what I have before I show you. That's cool. Glad to know you guys are interested that much. But also, friendly reminder here, especially on this note, the troll stream coming up April 1st. We're gonna have some fun, or are we? I don't know. We'll see how it goes. I don't know. I'm gonna just make it fun and because I'm not butthurt. Okay, well we got the real Spring Hill Gym. Is that in Kansas? Anyway, I don't know what spring version of Spring Hill Gym we have tonight. We got Butthurt Spring Hill Gym. We might have to send him on his way, but okay. Okay. William, be honest. Are you Joni Schnitzel? Joni Snitchell is one of the Pumping Vinyl mascots. So there you go. That's all you need to know, James Farley. Joni Snitchell is not a real person. I use this Joni Snitchell character for the thumbnails, and actually Scott No Solution. I don't know if you still watch his channel. He's kind of more part of like the metal. I kind of became friends with him through the classic rock sort of circle. So Scott, if you're watching, would let say hi. That'd be cool. But no, I sort of got this idea. Like he started using babes as his thumbnails for his videos, and I sort of comments like, yeah, I just figure if I put a picture of a babe, maybe people are more likely to click the video. So that's actually a nod to Scott at No Solution. So, anyways, we're gonna keep it moving here. And vintage stock, excuse me, had a copy of this for like $12. And this is that Walmart press. And when I just looked it up online, no copies for sale. So there you go. And I think Walmart's like switching it up. Like they do like a, fruitcake vinyl or some stuff like that. Anyway, that was vintage stock. Also at vintage stock, I'd never see this Johnny Cash record, especially for living in Omaha, the amount of country records I have surrounding me. But Johnny Cash, look at them beans. 75. So have yet to listen to that. My first copy. There you go. See, I love, I mean, you're not always going to find a Grail, but you will sometimes find a first copy of something in great shape. So James Farley misses Low Key Tito. Rest in peace. I mean, maybe you'll see Low Key Tito. I got some great troll accounts, almost as great as Arnie Zanzibar. He's great too. We got Dave here, one of the greatest of all time. So shout out to Tokyo's Toilet Style. Anyways, let me see. We're going to keep it moving here, and we got. Let me see. Should we keep it moving? So yes, and this was the third Buckaroos Night on the Town. So Buck Owens without the Buckaroos. And this is one of those things. I don't know if you guys have seen those records that people try to like tape the shrink wrap. I hate, that's one thing I hate coming across. So you got to be careful and make sure you tear these off because it looks like, yeah, a little. I'll have to take scissors and get rid of the rest of that. So actually, funny thing, if you guys are watching, any shout out to anybody from Omaha watching it. If you guys shop at Canesville, someone recently sold a whole collection of records with the shrink wrap taped to the cover and everything. And so, yeah, it's annoying. There are a few records I wouldn't have mind having, but then I even looked through them at like cover replacement. You would think, or vinyl replacement. You would think that like people taping all that stuff up would take care of for the most part, the vinyl looks pretty nice, but I didn't buy any of them out of those collections. That's like, to me, when people tape the shrink to the records, it's like more annoying than like water damage covers. Anyways, this record here, Play Deep by The Outfield. This is a record that was like seriously like a $2 record or a bargain bin record. And anyway, with the song, I Don't Want to Lose Your Love Tonight is on here. Huge hit for them. And I guess I have legit sold this record for $45. Shocking. And so I did, for flipping purposes only. I did pay a little bit for this. He had two copies. The second copy he wanted more money for, and it was in lesser condition. So I got his cheaper copy that was in better condition. So boom. Yeah, no, I don't know. A weird one. Another one of them wild card 80s records that just sort of shot up in value. When I start showing the Grail type stuff, that topic will come up. All these records that have just suddenly why is this a $40 record? I still have no idea. Anyways, Spring Hill Jim, you are welcome to be here if you can stay on topic tonight. All right? You gotta work on that there, kid. Anyways. Same vendor. And this is that thrift shop next to Time Machine. Actually, let me reverse. I'm going to talk about Time Machine because I got these from Time Machine, some 12-inch singles. And I will be real honest with you. I think that Time Machine, one of the worst record shops I've ever been in. I mentioned that copy of Coltrane Lush Life, 61 press. They had it. And I took a look. The sticker said VG, VG, $150. And when I looked that record up online, true VGs, or I can only assume if it is a true VG, is about $100 record. If you want to sell your copy of that real fast and you got a VG, 75 bucks. But they had $150 VG. And I looked at the vinyl and it's at best G. I question if they even played it. I doubt they definitely didn't clean it. But, you know, this is the point I said in the video. Sometimes people get those collections. You know, you got a Coltrane on Prestige, Lush Life. I better put 150 bucks right on it. So you got to watch out for those record stores. Time Machine, sadly, one of the worst I've ever been in. But I will always go there because right next to them is an antique shop. The record I'm going to show you. Well, okay, I'll just show you these 12 inches quick. Which in their 12-inch bin, this is one at least, you know, type of record they're not looking up online, Discogs or whatever, but found New Order, the Perfect Kiss single. New Order singles are great to find. This was in great shape. Also was fine. Speaking of Grails, 12 inches, there are 12-inch Grails out there. And you just sort of have to, you know, study it. And I was starting to see some of those. We got Electric Avenue here, Eddie Grant, but I was starting to see some of those Grail labels. You know, I have seen that label before. There's an artist who, you know, has an $800 record, 12-inch record on this label. So that's another thing. When you have one record with one song, or, you know, bonus beats and dub mixes for one song, and it goes for 800 bucks, and it's a 12-inch. I'd call that a Grail. But anyway, Electric Avenue, Eddie Grant, not a Grail, but a party jam all day. And I will tell you what, I summertime, this record, this song comes on the radio. I roll my window down and I make sure that all the cars around me join the summer party. Anyways, some of these weren't in the greatest shape. Finding a copy of this, Tana Gardner, Heartbeat, which was used for the song Buddy by De La Soul. And funny thing about that song, De La Soul, like in their earliest, you know, 3 Feet High and Rising, some people thought they were a gay rap group. And I think it's because they use like the yellow and the flowers and all that. And that was not the case. But people cited the song Buddy, which I think, you know, featured, you know, friends from A Tribe Called Quest. You know, this is their, anyway, they had that stigma early on. Anyway, they're just fun comic rappers. That's all. I wouldn't take it seriously. But anyway, this is a total jam here. Tana Gardner, Heartbeat. And this would even be funny how I found, like, you know, a couple, three 12 inches that I would just absolutely love playing. But finding these 12 inches actually had me thinking. Weren't there like sort of like those disco demolition nights back in like 1977 where, you know, maybe there was a baseball game and bring your fucking disco records. We're all throwing them into a pile and we're going to have a monster truck run all over them. Well, it does sort of, speaking of Heartbeat, it does sort of break my heartbeat. Wondering how many copies of this record made it to the disco demolition, but I got a nice enough copy there. What am I complaining about? Anyway, found this too. Kano, I'm Ready. And this was another hit I love to play. Do you guys remember the song? What was it from back in the day? Whoop, there it is. Whoop, there it is. Whoop, there it is. Couldn't resist. This was an absolute killer jam to play back in the day. And of course, yeah, whoop, there it is. First time I heard this song. But yeah, no, a favorite 12-inch of mine. I'll be real honest. When I busted through the door last night, getting these home, these were the first records I played, the 12 inches. So there you go. Also picked up Jimmy Spicer, The Bubble Bunch, which is always also a killer, early hip hop song to play. Jimmy Spicer, of course, did Money, Dollar Bill, y'all. Another De La Soul sample. And that was another jam I just loved playing too. So, of course, my theme song. But anyways, okay, I got a ton of trolls right now who are just obsessed. I mean, I do not pay you guys any attention, but I got like 4 people who just can't stop thinking about me on a daily basis, man. I don't know, Jim. I see you here. I'm just going to throw this out there. It might be a good idea to go out into the real world and meet real people. Just throwing that out there. Anyway. So anyway, that was Time Machine. Didn't budge on the Coltrane. He had a copy of My Favorite Things on Atlantic. And then Topeka Top City had the My Favorite Things, the ABC Impulse press, which I thought about buying, but he wanted a little bit too much money compared to what it was going for online. So no, I did. You will still find those Coltrane records. Not all of them are Grails, but I want to throw this particular record up as far as what happened to this record here going up in price. This is Donny Hathaway Live from 1972. And Donny Hathaway, great career, short career, worked a little bit with Roberta Flack, who does the inner, liner notes of this album here. And this is a record I used to see a lot. I think you could get it for around $5 or $10 when I first started collecting. And then, over the years, especially like maybe the last 10 or so, this has shot up to like a $75, $80 record. And I don't know, I still turn up copies of this. And I found this at the antique shop right next to Time Machine. And this was one of the wall records at Time Machine. And the cover, total beater copy. And I don't remember. It was too high. I didn't even ask about this record, but I saw this same record next door, $20. And I think $20 is the most I've ever paid for this record. But as far as a record goes, why has this shot up in value? Truthfully, as a live performance, it is very solid. You do have songs like, The Ghetto, which is an absolute jam. He does a cover of John Lennon, his version of Jealous Guy. Very soulful. He had a very classic soulful twist, when funk was becoming, funk was emerging as the new pop sound in funk music. But I want to point this out. In 72, they used this Atco label, which is more consistent with like, the later 60s Atco records. But they use this as the label. And I almost want to, I kind of think that they did that sort of to, maybe they thought that this was more along the lines of like an Otis Redding record. I don't know. But they were using, in 72, by 72, they were using the green and red sort of two-tone Atlantic labels, which is why it has this Atlantic Group original sleeve with it. So I was sort of thinking about that as I listened to it. But also, this record does feature a hip hop sample, Little Ghetto Boy, which was probably most popularly used on Dr. Dre The Chronic, and then the Wu-Tang Clan sampled this too. But this is a great record. Is it a Grail? No. I'm still scratching my head though why people are paying $75 for it, which is it indicates to me that there are people out there who really want this record. And then for 72 being the year, this is right in there with, funk records were what people were listening to. Like, you guys come across those Funkadelic records and you find them and they're beat up. Well, I mean, they played the shit out of them because, it was new for them at the time. But nice find. So anyway, Donny Hathaway. live. I feel like I used to find like maybe one copy per year. I might find one copy every 2 years now, so it is thinning out a little. But I did find two copies, next door to each other. Anyway, you know what? Thanks for your patience, guys. Or I don't know, we do got a little, mix of people here. Some people like, the deep music talk. Other people love the cheesecake. And speaking of grails, no, not a grail. This, however, though, I mentioned that there are artists out there who do not have grails. Barbara Mandrell, no grails. Sorry. However, that doesn't mean that there are still they're not unique releases. Anyway, this is Eileen Mandrell, the album Texercise. So this is actually like a unique, kind of rare aerobics record, but it's got like a full country band to it. So I haven't listened to this. I just got this sealed. But we got to break this thing open because this is a gatefold. And well, yeah, there's no Barbara Mandrell grails. Calling this a grail is a stretch, but it is like sort of like a one of a kind release here. And if you're a cheesecake collector, you're gonna want to get your hands on this record here. So, yeah, Eileen Mandrell, have no idea what the Texercise, haven't watched the video or anything, but there is your fold out gatefold, kind of nice looking. I like how they got the Texas flag. She's sort of posing there with the Texas flag. I will say, she's cute, but I think Barbara Mandrell was just, I don't know, totally smoking. Anyway, this is a 2 LP. So I don't know. I am interested, how they would mix country music, a country band, and exercise music. But anyway, there you go. Got that there too. And anyways, also copy can really never have too many of these. Maybe Willie Nelson at the top of his game. There are some Willie Nelson records that I'm going to show when I sort of, when we hold up, Grail records. Are there Willie Nelson Grails? You know, that could be debated. Anyway, I'm going to blow through the rest of these here. Kind of a Drag by the Buckinghams. Not a hard record to find, but yeah, find these still out in the wild. We got Jason Rojas trolling right now while surface noise is going on. Maybe you should start talking instead of sitting there in utter silence. Anyway, I picked up, I don't know. Maybe you should start talking instead of sitting there in utter silence, worrying about someone's life, or you wouldn't be having hard times. Anyway, Millie Jackson, Hard Times. Great covers. And this is that sort of Norman Rockwell sort of spin-off. Norman Rockwell. Okay, so Tom Newsom is the artist on this, but I do like the sort of Norman Rockwell kind of theme here. Hard Times, Millie Jackson. And she's dressed sort of like a streetwalker in a way, shopping for groceries. So her covers were killer. And you got to really credit Millie Jackson as being a true innovator for hip hop, no doubt. A pioneer, and from a female artist, mind you. So there you go. Yeah, no, I'm showing a lot of records that were just precursors to hip hop tonight. I guess Donny Hathaway Live, the Timmy Thomas record, anything Millie Jackson, total precursor to hip hop. So ended up just theming together by accident. Found this in the bargain bin, Rainbow Funk by Junior Walker and the All Stars. 71. I don't know that I've ever had a copy of this. So, but I used to look out for his records. Also, cover a little bit beat, Water Damage, Kink's Greatest Hits, but the record looked great. And especially Kink's Greatest. This will not be a hard jacket to, find a replacement for. But anyways, also, yeah, Mary Hopkin Postcard, produced by Paul McCartney. Yeah, no, not a bad record. Pretty easy. Or I don't know. It's His record doesn't blow me away, but you know, it ain't bad. And then I did show these already from yesterday. Julie London, Julie is her name. We got Sandy Warner hanging out with George Shearing here and Diane Weber as well. I guess real quick, I do want to mention I really wish I would have, you know, snagged one of these clean ones, you know, in the last 10 years every time I passed this record up. I ordered a near mint copy of this online, near mint cover and vinyl. After shipping, it was 13 bucks. Fortunately, I did get a Whiplash mailer with that, which is okay. But yeah, uh, tough finding like a really nice copy of this. Tim, Randy at their stores here in Omaha, you're looking at $5, $7. Randy's got $15 on a copy of this record. It's tops if on the internet, $4. If you want a near mint copy, $8 plus shipping. So I don't get their rule of thumb sometimes. Anyways, let me catch my breath a little bit. These get long-winded, like I said, trying to talk about all the records that you get. We haven't even started Grail talk. Well, that's all right. Getting this for $5 is nice. Marvin Gaye, I Want You. What year is this? 75, 76? You know, featuring the one of his biggest hits, I Want You. The instrumental After the Dance is totally killer too. You do have the vocal here to close out the album. Yeah, no, they kind of, you know, theme this. This is a very much a concept, you know, theme album, you know. I mean, of course, you could argue all of his albums were sort of love themed, but I Want You by Marvin Gaye. Haven't had this in a while. Great record. And then I also picked up, this is on a blue note, Bobby Humphrey records, flute records that are just funky as hell. And, you know, this is a 74 release, original 74 on that, you know, blue note label they were using then. But Blacks and Blues is the one you want for Bobby Humphrey. But really, I think even the Columbia records, Bobby Humphrey, are still very killer and funky, you know, and easier to find. But there you go. Don't really invite a lot of flutists into my collection, but Bobby Humphrey's always welcome. Anyway, so that was, catch my breath here, that was Topeka. And we got someone who wants to create a troll account of me while I'm streaming. We got chocolate cheesecake, average record, below average, collector, greatest, hardest working digger in Omaha. 100%. I am the hardest record digger in Omaha. And I want to come here and share with you guys my experiences. But anyways, I want to talk about Grails now that I've talked about all those records. And I pulled out, you know, some Grails that I own. Grails. Big Star Radio City. You know, this is on Ardent, which is a, you know, subsidiary of Stax, you know, Big Star, a Memphis-based band featuring Alex Chilton, and there's the group on the back there. And so, yeah, no, what are Grails? I got that Big Star record there. This is, you know, Marquee Moon. Is this a Grail? This is a white label promo. I kind of have a high price on it, but, you know, is an original of this a Grail? Now, I want to maybe, these records here, this for sure. Let's settle something, you know, there's Grails and there's Essential Records. This for sure falls under Essential Record. Is an original first press white label promo a Grail? I don't know. I think it's worth a couple $100. But there are records out there that are worth a lot more than that. And there's stuff like this Red Cross on Posh Boy, which I found last summer for $5. Now I want to drive this home. Is going out, finding a record for very cheap. This has been a dream record of mine, but to go out and find it for $5, I didn't have to pay $100. I didn't have to wait for it to come in the mail or anything. Finding this for $5 with it being on my Discogs want list for as long as it was, it gave me that feeling of finding a grail. So there you go. I mean, we could sit here. This is why I'm having this conversation. Well, here is another one. Ramones, first press. What makes this record special? It's the misprint catalog number on the label, which I think the SASD 7520, I don't know, it falls in line with like another release, but this is a true, this would be a true first press of this record. Now, in recent years, I've seen people pay as much as $400 for this particular pressing. I did not pay that much for this. And, you know, we got the cut corner here. Vinyl looks great. Other than the cut corner, I don't know what you're saying. Do people call these, excuse me, VG plus with the cut corner? I tend to think if a portion of the jacket is missing like that, you got to go VG. So here you go. Is this a grail? I mean, and this is what I want to ask Dom, Seeking a Thread, because I watched his video. In my opinion, Dom showed nothing but true grails. But this, at the same time, you ask a common Ramones fan, you know, most Ramones fans are deep collectors and they know a lot about music. But I could see, you know, the average Ramones fan watching Dom's video and like, I don't know any of those records. But there you got a lot of people out there who are willing to pay a lot of dough for that record. There's also, well, this record right here, Blonde on Blonde. This is an original featuring Claudia Cardinale, which I don't know if you guys were aware, she actually passed away last September. And for, you know, as much, like this is the copy of Blonde on Blonde, that the most desirable copy. And I think people have paid a lot of dough. Sorry, Bob, for that. People have paid a lot of dough to get the original with the Claudia Cardinale photo in here. But I will say, if you go look up Claudia Cardinale on Discogs, and if the big deal is her, she's got more rare records out there, or album covers where she's officially featured on even, that are more rare than this. Now, I have like 4 copies of this US press Blonde on Blonde. One of them's a near mint copy. And so, like, you know, if you got 4 copies of something, is it a grail? I don't really think so. But I also got, now these are German presses. And they sort of did these as like, you know, volume 1, volume 2. Well, you do got Claudia on the back here. And I did just drop the StreamYard link. So if any of you want to come up, I did, you know, I wanted to invite anybody to share a grail. But anyway, excuse me, Dave, welcome so much to the show. Thank you so much for being here is what I'm trying to say. William, what you just said about the Red Cross 12-inch exactly was my definition of a grail. Something you've been after for ages, but not found. And yeah, my experience with Red Cross, I think my very first exposure to them was, believe it or not, WFMU featured Steve McDonald playing bass over White Blood Cells. That was my first time ever hearing Red Cross. And so I, you know, had to go back, you know, I'd find their CDs. I think I had a repress of like Neurotica. They're a great, you know, poppy punk band. And I like how they kept, you know, punk in their style. And they're an LA punk band. So, you know, you get, they are LA punk. They were always true to who they were. They were a band who never really sold out. They did have a mainstream sort of push in the early 90s, but the deepest of deep Red Cross fans I've talked to will tell you to avoid all those 90s albums. But yeah, no, I had that Red Cross, you know, back when they were spelling it, you know, the before they had to change their name. Yeah, I had that on my want list. Like I didn't even like, God, what do I pay for that record? And to find one, and practically it was near mint. I mean, it had a few spots on it, but $5. And it's like, wow, man. That's the best feeling. Or when I found that Songs for Your Boyfriend upstairs up in Canesville, that was on my Discogs want list, and with like one US seller even. So to find stuff like that, yeah. Does a Grail, does it have to be a $300 record? Or could it be like, hey, maybe 10 people want it, but one person refreshes their page constantly to get that record. Anyway, want to hold this one up right here. Ryan Kidd, Dead in Memphis, limited to 200 copies. Is this a Grail? You're goddamn right. This record is a Grail. Shout out to Ryan Kidd and another guy, Dead in Memphis, straight out of Memphis. Great record for the vinyl community. Always loved his channel. What happened to Ryan Kidd? And if there's still pressings of this available, get your hands on it before that becomes an $800 record. Anyway, cool record. Ryan Kidd's the shit. I was sort of, maybe having a little fun with that, but I'm going to show this record again, guys. And, all you people who don't like me showing records more than, you're only supposed to show a record one time or something. I'm not that guy. And so, no, I do want to tell this story again, because in the last year, she, Diane Weber, is a legend to me. And, I think a lot of you people might get this impression, collecting cheesecake, I'm this pervert or something who collects cheesecake or something like that. I don't know. But I want to talk about the significance of this and finding it. And in my discovery of her, what blew me away was that Nelson Riddle Sea of Dreams record cover. When I first saw it, I couldn't even stop looking at it. And I ended up, she's featured on maybe 6 or 7 record covers that I know of, but with this one being the most rare. Now, the artist, Seiji Hiroka and his quintet, the music on here, it's really, it's no better or no worse than a Milt Jackson record. But, with the cover, if you look him up a little bit, you'll see, obviously what they did here with the cover and Diane Weber is what makes this record desirable. But still, music is also great, because, the Nelson Riddle record is just, it's Nelson Riddle music, he backed Frank Sinatra, amongst others. And so, you get that sort of thematic vibe. But with this here, what's important to me now, if you guys remember the cheesecake episode I did last September, I sort of featured Diane towards the end, and I told the story about how she came to Sioux City, Iowa, and that's a place I love to travel to. Hour and a half up the road. I'll go there once or twice a year, but I always drive by the courthouse when I go to DeWolf's. And Diane Weber, I don't know the year on this, but I will sort of rehash the story, is when there was nudist magazines coming into the state of Iowa, and this was new to people. The distribution of nudist magazines was very taboo. And I think I did show you the Playboy issue where one of them where she's featured in. Playboy was not what it is today. Playboy was very artistic and tasteful back in the mid 50s. And if you look up online, those are the issues that go for a lot of dough. The later 60s into the 70s, you can get those for cheap. But I consider Diane Weber, a nudist, and very interesting, very spunky and sassy, but she broke a lot of ground for, models of that time. And sort of this backstory is, she was supposed to testify against, they thought she was going to come up and testify against nudist magazines entering the state of Iowa. And she sort of took this, took the whole court by storm, took her own spin to it. She even came into the courtroom looking smoking hot, from what the report says. But I found this in Shenandoah, Iowa, roughly an hour and a half away from Sioux City on I-29. So this is why this is a Grail to me. I sat up here and told you all that to explain to you why this is a Grail to me. My first copy of this, I paid a Japan seller. I was having a great month last December. I'm like, I want that record. For Diane, I want that as the Diane Weber cover. So I ordered it, had a great December, and then magically, I don't know how this happened. Someone popped up a copy super cheap of this. So I was about to do it like a dual framing thing before I found this third copy. So there's another little wrench I want to throw into this Grail chat is if you have 3 copies of something, or like the Dylan Claudia Cardinal record, if you got 4 copies of something, is that a Grail? Well, look this record up on Discogs. SJV-111 should pop right up. I believe Discogs says 20 people have it. Another 200 people want it. And, I mentioned that record, Gianni Moniz, How to Make Love to a Blonde. This, I had to while I'm very, I am in hot pursuit of that record. While I'm in hot pursuit, I had to take a step back and realize paying $20 for this thing, total score. In my mind, yes, this is a Grail. I think Diane Weber, one of the most important cover models who's ever existed, just as important as Dolores Erickson, Sandy Warner, and groundbreaking for her time. A female nude model who can be groundbreaking. Imagine that. Did I imagine? I don't listen to Morrissey. I don't know if we need to. How many reminders you need there? Not my cup of tea. So, anyways, but Jim, you're here. You can hang out. And I mentioned, the group, the Beatles. Well, I'm gonna share my screen here. Well, actually, real quick. Yeah, there are Beatles Grails, and no, I don't have a Butcher cover, and no, I am not hell bent on a Butcher cover. But I do have a near mint, and yes, this is an official The Beatles Christmas album from Apple, and it's an official press, matrix match, and everything. When you look this up on Discogs, this is the Discogs page for the Beatles Christmas album, and all just to kind of show you how many times this has been bootlegged like crazy. I don't know. Has this ever really ever been back as an official release? I don't think so. And so, yeah, this is like a kind of in a way, a one of a kind release. This was my father's, so he did pass this down to me. But I wanted to, maybe throw this up as like, is this a Grail to Beatles fans? Well, 1,000, almost 1,100 people say they have this. And out of all the Beatles fans in the world, only 658 people say that they want it. And so, I wanted to maybe point this out. Is this a Beatles Grail? I think maybe this could have. I actually have not listened to this yet, but I did want to hold this up. So I didn't, it might not, it may have a low count. Maybe it's not as great of a Beatles release. I don't know. I think maybe I told myself I was going to listen to that around Christmas time, and then it never happened. Anyway, I want to talk a little bit briefly, just quickly. I know we don't got a lot of hip hop fans in the VC, but since I'm a hip hop guy, I will just sort of blow through these real quickly. Now, hip hop Grails. Now, I have Dr. Dre the Chronic, which is that a Grail? In my opinion, I would trade any record Dom showed in his video. I would swap out for my Dr. Dre the Chronic. But I don't know, because the Chronic is not my favorite hip hop album either. But there are some records I want to hold up as potential. These are records I've seen sell for a lot of dough. One, you guys know, I'm a huge Jay Dilla fan. This is the original Rough Draft EP. And at the time of his passing, this was going for $300 online. And Stone's Throw, like a year later, maybe a little over a year, released this as, you know, the full thing with the instrumentals. And as soon as that came out, the value in this dropped tremendously. I got this for 30 bucks, and I've had 2 or 3 of these. But you see the $9.99 price on this. If Jay Dilla were still alive, this could easily be like a $10 record. And a lot of that is, you know, this selling for $300. You know, you can package a story, and Jay Dilla was like the perfect. You could create this, you know, story that there was so much character depth in Jay Dilla is what I'm trying to say. Another one for consideration, but like I said in the video yesterday, there are no grails in the modern era, including this. Well, or this is a 2004 press. This is going to have the song Cookies, which has the Sesame Street sample. And when MF Doom died, this was legit going for like $500. So, but I mean, the thing is, they can't clear the Sesame Street sample anymore. If you want it, this is like the only way to get it. So I don't know what this record goes for anymore. But MF Doom records, that was a weird one. And no, I don't think that those are grails. You just have new collectors that are more in tune with the modern era, who just sort of shit a brick at certain times. I don't know. Here's one. Is this a grail? No. Is it essential though? Yes. Here's another one. Grail? No. Do you need to discover this? Hell yeah, it's killer. This is one that you used to be able to get for 20 bucks, but I think this has gone up to maybe a $200 record. This is Monster Island Czars, early 2000s kind of underground hip hop. And then there's stuff like this, which I've been trying to get my hands on, you know, Gangstar Records. I think 1990, the year on this. Step in the Arena. You know, I love Gangstar in this year. I think even as an early old school hip hop duo, Gangstar very much was pushing the envelope. But yeah, no, Gangstar Records, very hard to track original presses of these down. I don't know what an original of this would go for. But you know, and I just picked that one out as like, you know, Grail Seeker. You know, you gotta have OGs of all the Gangstar records, right? Here's one that maybe could be argued. I don't know, a hip hop grail. And this is what I mean, guys. When I mentioned when the stream started earlier, you got the Beatles and you got Taylor Swift. Well, let me get back into share screen here. And no, I don't have either of these records. But this is the Taylor Swift. This is one. I'm not holding up the record store day, but this is the one currently which appears to be like a $1,500 record, $1,000 record, $2,000 record. I don't know. And this is 2017. This is the orange vinyl press. And they are not bringing this back. Or I don't know. But there's this here, and this is the picture disc. And I had this recently. And this right now is currently, you got 58 copies for sale. Is this a grail? No. Are people paying over $100 for it right now? Yes. And the thing is, it's just like I said, you need people like the Beatles fans and Taylor Swift fans hold up this vinyl market. Like we really don't give these people who pay big money to these artists. They essentially, you know, hold up the vinyl market. Excuse me. So I was just really kind of bringing them up. No, Taylor Swift records are not grails, but you do have a lot of fans out there right now. And the thing I want to mention is the day the Taylor Swift market drops, if it ever does, these records will be so easy to find. I have this strange prediction that Taylor Swift vinyl could be the same thing as like Beanie Babies. And I don't know if you guys remember in the heyday of Beanie Babies when those were going for like, you know, I think weren't people paying like $2,000 for like a Princess Diana Beanie Baby? I think you can get the thing for less than 20 bucks anymore. So Anyway, this is an OG. All Eyes on Me, Tupac, great shape. You got all 4 LPs. The funny thing about this is reissues now, which are digitally, it'll have that digitally remastered bar on it. Reissues, they've uh, standard price for a 4 LP is an $79.99. That is walking into Barnes and Noble. That is walking into Homer's, your local record shop who carries new vinyl. If this is in print, this is the record industry. MSRP is $79.99. I don't know what this would go for in an auction, but this is an incredible shape. And All Eyes on Me, and Tupac Shakur, arguably the most popular rapper ever. I mean, people will be arguing, till the end of time, the 3 greatest rappers of all time are Tupac, Biggie, and fill in the blank for whoever's running the generation. So it's like, what now would be Tupac, Biggie, Kendrick Lamar, the 3 greatest rappers of all time. They will forget about Big L and all the real greatest rappers of all time. But Tupac will always be there. They'll throw Eminem's name in there before they'll throw Big L. But anyway, so that was hip hop, and I just sort of wanted to throw those out there as far as like hip hop grails. And like I mentioned, there are 12-inch grails. There are 12-inch records that go for $800, which I have never touched. I've never played. I think the most rare 12-inch record I've ever played was you can look this up. Raven featuring Jocelyn Brown, So in Love is the song. That's the most rare disco 12-inch I've had. I don't know what it goes for. I think I sold my copy for a couple $100, but I don't remember. It's been a little while. And it was a killer song. And the sad thing about it is I never played it at Soul Night. And it was like I found my first copy. I actually had a few of those. I got one for super cheap too. So I found one in the bargain dollar bin at the Goodwill, and then I got another one online for super cheap. But no, that was like my rarest 12-inch during my DJ days. So I want to talk about country grails a little bit, but I want to talk about these too. And this is the first Funkadelic album, Free Your Mind, and Your Booty Will Follow. A killer cover. I paid, yeah, that's right, $5 for this. And this was at actually St. Joseph Record Show 2 years ago. I showed this on the channel already one time, and I had to give this, it needed a clean, and it played all right. And I'm happy to have it, but this this is the one. Like, if there's gonna be a Funkadelic Grail, I think this is it. And this is one like I've just always wanted, and this is something I kind of had to Frankenstein. So I know I have like this cover is absolute VG plus. Let me just kind of show you. So yeah, no, finding a really nice cover of this, not easy at all. Fully intact. This is even a uni pack, which doesn't have any spine wear on the outside or inside. A lot of times you get like those uni packs with sometimes you find a cover that's just torn off, or like that Doors record that's a uni pack. I found that cover torn off enough times, but I mean this especially. I've heard the phrase used in near mint. That's a grail, or in VG plus this is a grail. Let me show you what I got here. And it's been a few years. I had to play this on my turntable to make sure. So yeah, side A, total VG plus. Look at, got that gloss going, the light going right on it. Here is the last track on here, which I don't know. Wars of Armageddon. Here, let me see if I can get that scuff in there. It's a very faint scuff, but it's a little bit annoying. Do you drop down to VG with that scuff? Now, I played through it, no background noise, no clicking. And funny thing, the person I got this from, I believe it was Tommy, same person who hooked me up with the Denise record. And he said, I think he said it had a little click, but when I played it today, this afternoon before I went to the post office, and okay, that scuff, you can kind of see it a little bit better there. But I'd almost venture to say VG plus on this, even with that little bit annoying scuff on there. But finding this record in as great shape anymore, not easy. And is this a grail? I mean, this is kind of where I need your guys' thoughts. Part of it is like, or let me sort of backtrack and well, speaking of backtrack, where I picked up this record here. And I mentioned when I got this record, and this is something that I want to drive home with the Grail. Because a lot of people think, people with Grails or I have Grails, this gives me superiority amongst my peers. And I do you get a lot of that attitude sometimes from people who own Grails. But I mentioned when I got this, there's something that, owning a Grail should give you a humbling feeling. This is what I want to mention about, maybe this is why Dom said that, he doesn't own any Grails, is because you want to be humble about your experiences, right? And, it's like, I think when I found this, yes, humbling experience, but also, maybe it was the same day that Concert Buddy was having his Are There Any Grails Left? And I just thought, what message is he trying to send? Number one. Number two, he never, in that whole live stream, he never once answered the question. But owning a Grail, listening to it, even though this album has been discovered, uh, owning an original will put you in like a rediscovery period. And yes, I mentioned, yes, owned vinyl copies of this, CD copies of this. But like I said, the way to hear this, the way to experience this is yes, you do want an original. And on that note, I guess I will show, this is both of these very lucky to have very clean, very nice VG Plus copies on these Coltrane records. But Grails, I mean, these aren't Blue Trains, but they're nice, very desirable. I mentioned, the Beatles and Taylor Swift is like, they're gonna have their Grails. These I would consider both of these essential albums, but essential album, like, is the first, Thin Lizzy album a Grail, even with the original cover? No, but it's a very highly desirable album, an essential album. These are also essential albums, but I do think that there is something about these that put them over as Grails compared to, like, Thin Lizzy records, for example. But your opinion is always welcome. If you guys, anyone who doesn't think these are Grails, I just want, I want to know. And at that point, what do we start charging? Well, I want to hold this record up as, well, I live in Omaha, guys. You guys have to at least appreciate that I hold this up as a Grail in our city. So Preston Love Omaha Barbecue, featuring Shuggy Otis on guitar. He was the son of Johnny Otis, and guitar virtuoso. You are going to want uh, albums like Inspiration, Information, anything Shuggy Otis. Kind of hard to find. He's another artist. You find a Shuggy Otis record. There's another. If you had an original Shuggy Otis record, uh, you could argue that is a Grail. But I want to say, just because I live in Omaha, I barely find this record in Omaha. I've seen some vendors who, want a lot of money, like $80 or more for really beater copies. And I bring this to the record show and I have over $100 on it. And maybe it's a little overpriced, but I do think maybe our city should be a little more appreciative of a record like this. On Kent, killer blues jazz record. This is, with the grill on there and being Omaha barbecue, this is a great record to cook your dinner to, I will tell you. But wanted to throw that out there as like, yeah, maybe I throw that out there as like, I love taking it to record shows and I love having faith in Omaha. But I want to mention this. Now, I found this at the Goodwill last year for 99 cents. One of the last 99-cent purchases I ever made at the Goodwill. And I did show a few other jazz. This was in like a saxophone driven jazz hall. And I showed that record earlier, Jimmy McGriff on Solid State. If I can find it real quick, I'll hold them both up. I believe it is the same cover model. Yeah. I do think that this might be the same cover model, but not super important. But finding this, I don't, this is a Grail? No. But Jimmy McGriff on Blue Note in this great a shape, it gave me the feeling, especially buying this for 99 cents. I mean, I wouldn't normally go out of my way and buy a record like this, but in the year 2025, when I found this for $1, yeah, stuff, those experiences is what gives you, that feeling of elation. Showed this too enough times, but it's like maybe is the first Wes Montgomery an essential album? I'd say yes. Finding this in as great a shape as it was, yeah, I paid $30 for it, but made me feel almost as good as finding this for $1. So there, and I'm just throwing that out there to you guys. Those might not be Grails, but like I said, finding this stuff for that cheap in this day and age, yeah. You guys know this record, right? I talked about owning this record. I've talked about tragically selling this record. Well, this is Headless Heroes of the Apocalypse. Eugene McDaniels. And if you are familiar with the early part of his career, he was a kind of a pop crooner, maybe not much different than like a Sammy Davis Jr. And if you want my opinion, so this record, he really pushes the envelope on here. This is politically driven, racially driven. You get the experience of the ghetto life all on this record here. You do got a lot of hip hop samples on here as well, but this is up for Grail consideration. What is it truly worth? I think in the shape this is in, about a $300 record. Now, the thing is, they have reissued this a couple different times from the original master tapes. I think one is like, I think they did like color variants for them. But now, the Waxed featured one of these reissues in his auction. And reissues of this from the original master tapes, yeah, this is going for over $100 as a reissue. So I want to maybe hold this up as a possible, is this a Grail? Is it as valuable as any record Dom showed yesterday? I don't think so. But I do believe more people are on the lookout for this. And then also, especially the hip hop influence, of course, hip hop culture, showing the Donny Hathaway and the Timmy Thomas record. People have cited this record as being an early precursor to hip hop. I wanted to mention, with him being like a more crooner style, that singing style does creep into this record a little bit. So Headless Heroes of the Apocalypse, Eugene McDaniels. Yes, it's an incredible album. But here's what I want to say about this being a Grail and Grails in general. Like, if you're gonna own a Grail, you also appreciate the story and the experience of it. It's more than just like I own a rare record. And it's the fact that this was banned by Spiro T. Agnew in 71, shortly after it was released. And and it wasn't, it was not really ever reissued. I think it was maybe tried to be reissued as a bootleg, but there you go, up for consideration as a Grail, Headless Heroes of the Apocalypse by Eugene McDaniels. This, a ghetto classic. Is it essential? Yes, but keeping it in print is not an easy thing to do either. So throwing those out there as potential Grails. And then, yes, I want to talk about this record too. And this is Stooges Funhouse. And this is something that on the 50th anniversary of this record, which I think was June 7th, 2020, the same day that Rhino box set is a limited number 1970, the same day that came out, this shot up in value. And I had a copy, and what I would consider a strong VG copy, and I had it listed for 150 bucks, and it sold. And then after it sold, I watched the value of this just skyrocket. And the sad thing about, I say strong VG copy, as that record sold, this was at a time where I was like trying to be like, all right, be super conservative on Discogs, make customers happy, and just make people happy. I changed my Discogs philosophy, and then maybe conservatively graded this record. Fortunately, I have like 3 copies of this now. But there you go again. 3 copies of a Grail. Is it a Grail? I don't know. But it was very, I don't know. It was interesting to see this shoot up in value on the day of its 50th anniversary, 50th birthday. So there you go, Stooges Funhouse, a record I really try not to play too much. And then I think I have shown you that I do own the box set, which I have not even broken open yet. And that is something my father left with me, but it has yet to be opened. But there you go, guys. Grails. I think I said a lot. I don't have, I guess maybe I'm rehashing this a little bit, but I don't know that Dom really mentioned that he found any of his Grails in like bargain bins. If that's the case, that's what makes a Grail. Owning a Grail, like, special is when you discover it. So, and I'm going to hold this up lastly here. And thanks, David Donley. I saw the tail end of, I don't know if you're still hanging out here. Okay, here we go. That Tupac, is that a gold stamped promo? Let me see if I can answer your question real quick. Yes, a GPS gold stamp promo is what that stands for. And give me a second while I find Tupac. All right. It's a 96 original. And then I think maybe in 2001, they did that digitally remastered version. Like they went back and sort of did. Okay, here we go. Writing on the cover. I don't see writing, but you do have this gold promo stamp. Some people find those annoying. I love them because it certifies you got an OG and you got an OG promo. So yeah, I know they did that. They did 2 LPs on each side. So, and whoever was the original owner of this sure kept it in great shape. I've had this for I never sold it. I got this maybe 15 years ago. So yeah, it's a Grail, or is it? Here, let me ask you this. I don't know if Dom, we got a decent audience for my channel. Hey, thanks for everyone for being here. And that would be my question to Dom is, what is a Grail to you? After seeing all the records that he showed yesterday, didn't know about that Shuggie Otis album. I've never owned any original Shuggie records. Lincoln Vintage Vinyl did get an OG. I think just a self-titled one. And he wanted like $125 for it. And I looked at the condition. It was VG on a visual. And, I don't know. I would love to have it. I just maybe at $125 in that moment. Um, wasn't feeling it, I guess, but it did sell. I think someone bought it rather quickly. Anyway, no, Dave Donnelly, and thank you. I got to be real honest with you. I caught your comment at the end of the video yesterday. I am very impressed. Sounds like you ordered yourself a copy of this record. Let me talk about this experience because this may not strike you guys as a Grail. Beverly Kenny, Born to Be Blue. But if you do look this up, you look up all of her other records, it does seem like any original presses of these records tend to go for a lot of dough. A lot of them people asking for, $400. Now, I did look this up on eBay, and it does look like you can get a G plus copy for $80. Then, G plus, who wants to pay $80 on a G plus? But I want to mention, I have listened to this record since buying it 6 times, and and I think Vinyl Piper. I think I briefly mentioned. I don't know if he was watching any of my videos recently, but he said Grails sometimes find you, and that's how I feel about this record. Funny thing about this had a July 30th, 2025 sticker. So this was inside of Canesville for 7 months. And this was in the easy listening section. If you guys, anyone watching this, Tommy, you know what I'm talking about. The easy listening section is stacked like towers of easy listening records on top of the regular section. And so, yeah, this record had a giant stack of easy listening records covering it. And that's what I was doing the other day when I found that Piano Witchcraft record. I think the last time I had gone through, it was for sure before July 30th. And I'm pretty sure because I went through that whole easy listening section, and I'm sure this would have popped out at me back then. And if it didn't, it certainly did now. But yeah, like I mentioned, she took her own life at 28 years old. And to, be discovering Julie London or, rediscovering Billie Holiday, it is along those lines. She has a very youthful sort of sass to her. And I don't know if you guys have noticed that I've used the word sass and sassy to describe like jazz vocalists, a few of them. Eartha Kitt for sure. And you get a little bit of that, maybe a little subtle on the Beverly Kenny record. But anyway, I'm still discovering her. Owning this is great. And I just want to, the fact that this is a Grail to other people, before I, part with this, I want to find out, is this a record I truly love? And like I said, yeah, I've listened to this record 6 times. And with the amount of records I have acquired, you'd think I'd be doing work and, listing stuff. But no, I've had to stop and appreciate this Grail here. So is it a Grail? Because, I mentioned, the other day, maybe it is a little easier to find some of these Grails if you broaden your horizon a little bit, or I guess I'll mention, when I go to record stores anymore, I don't shop the rock section. And when I start to shop the rock section, I just start running into like every copy of Back in Black AC/DC is a $25 record. It's getting to the point Blue Oyster Cult records are 15 and $20. So it's like that's why I stick to the bargain bins. And I know that the most common customer, they're the ones coming in. These record shops have their customers who are going to come in and pay $25 for their AC/DC records. It's not me. But on that note, I don't even have my own rock section sorted out like normal people. I do have like kind of quasi, A's, B's, and all that for the main rock and roll stuff. But like I have my 90s vinyl in a box. I got my OG punk records right here. I have like an 80s new wave and maybe post-punk kind of stuff going on. So yeah, I don't know. When I shop for records at like a normal record store, I do, I get bored. And I even that's kind of like when I was driving home last night. I was like, dude, your rock section at home isn't even organized. So it's like that's kind of I don't know, kind of the thing. I've spent so many years over the years buying nothing but rock and all that stuff, and I've been through those sections. One thing I want to mention because of the Acid Archives, I still don't, shop in the rock section. And why not? You think, why you could be missing Acid Archives. First off, I have found like that Blue Mountain Ridge I did find in a rock section last year. And then but like last week, finding that you know, Lion Hill record at the Goodwill, that's what I want to drive home here with this. Is the Lion Hill record a Grail? No, not at all. But what I want to say, okay, Grail, like I mentioned yesterday, yes, it's a cute term we're using for records that, you know, that we really want. But is everything in the Acid Archives a Grail? No. Um, but I think it's great and important, why a book like the Acid Archives exists so that we don't forget about these grails. And a lot of what Dom was holding up is in that book. So, and only reason I mention that is because uh, that book is saving a lot of grails into just falling into obscurity. And, like I mentioned, a grail can be so scarce and so unknown that we don't even know what it is or what it sounds like. So I want that to be also like, a grail could be anything or your grail or, is it just a cute term for records that we really want? The thing is, if the record vinyl hobby ever falls under, grails then are worth $1 or they're worth nothing. So, like I mentioned, shout out to the Swifties and all the people who only collect Beatles records, because if it weren't for you, all of our grails would be worthless or something. But, anyways, guys, I'll drop the StreamYard link. I'll hang out a little bit, and maybe it got buried, somewhere. But I was going to invite anybody up here. If you wanted to share a grail, go for it. But this is the LP Grail. There's also 45s that are Grails. And I'm going to tell you, I haven't really gotten super deep into my father's 45 collection, but, I have a feeling that there are many Grail type 45s in his collection I haven't discovered. And, I don't know. It's like, I think it's funny how Dom called his records non-Grails. And in my opinion, he showed true grails. Like those are truly records you have to dust off and unearth, and these are artifacts. So while we use the term grail loosely, I also want to throw words like artifacts and unearthing, brushing off the dust. So when you guys think of a grail, those yes, those should be your experiences in discovering grails. Or even like when I found the Coltrane, or even this, a grail in a way should humble you. If a grail does not humble you, either you're not appreciating it right or you just don't have a grail. So those are just some thoughts, some ideas, and we are all entitled to our opinion. I'm sure someone out there with a Taylor Swift Orange record is going to look at my video and be like, I don't give a shit about Funkadelic Maggot Brain. But anyway, I never shop Acid Archives albums, but was pleased to find some records that I had were, yeah, same with me. And I was a little bit, when I found out the Denise Klon record was in that book, I was a little like, do I want to get this book? And I wanted to get the book, but I didn't want to get it on Amazon because I hate Amazon. And then I ended up getting it through Poshmark of all places, from a local seller in Council Bluffs of all places. So it's good how things work out that way. But no, there are a few things in that book that I owned that I didn't know that were in there. But it makes sense when you start to read the book, read the entries, and realize the artist that they sort of get behind. I wish I had the book with me. Um, anyway, I know I read the entry of it when I had a little Acid Archives live stream over the Waxed, which I set to private. But no, when you get to know the Acid Archives, what I love about that book is most every album in there is like a real life experience of that artist. Or you could even say Del Shannon, um, the further adventures of Charles Westover is very much like a personal experience album for Del Shannon. And yeah, no, what's great about that book? It's great guide to records that could go, lost if a book like that didn't exist. But then just puts like a whole bunch of just like real real life experiences. For example, Dave Bixby, or or I wish I had the book because now I can't think of that record. It's in the preface of the book, they're talking about like their hero, and it's a guy who made it's set. Forget the name. I forget his name. If I own the record, I'd remember. But he cut this really cheesy, ridiculous record. I think he's even sitting on the front cover with like his chest hair hanging out. And you know, not everything in that book is necessarily a great record. It just might have like a great story behind it, and it's lost and it's hard to find. So there you go. The good Del Shannon album. And like I mentioned, I don't think the further adventures of Charles Westover really, you can define Del Shannon with that record. Certainly an interesting record, but weird. Like if you're used to early Del Shannon, like The Runaway, you're going to listen to Further Adventures of Charles Westover and be like, what is going on here? And yeah, no, I several listens of that record, and I'm still like, this guy is out there. Anyway, Psychedelic actually showed that record, or on he took a photo, and that of several, like kind of similar to like the Del Shannon. Like if there was like, I think he showed the Tommy Rowe Psych record, the Gary Lewis Psych record. So if any of those like more mainstream artists delved into that, uh Derek showed it. So I look forward to your video, Derek. And that's I think I think you guys would rather see Derek make that video than me. So cool. Love to see it. Anyway, guys, I've been here for 2 hours, long-winded. I'm not even done with the first beer yet. There we go. So thanks for being here with me, guys, tonight. For Grail Talk. At the very least, I guess the trolls are here tonight, which, and they're part of the audience. You made, T Swift is dog shit. So, I want to mention this quickly before I close out. Vinyl Piper mentioned Taylor Swift in one of his streams, and I think what he said is, yeah, no, when he streams like rare psych records, they don't get a lot of views. But if you streamed a Taylor Swift record, I'm sure it would get a ton of views. Well, I think maybe streaming Taylor Swift might get you like a copyright warning, but no, I think he's right. Uh, Psych records, for as cool and rare and valuable as they are, it is a marginal kind of thing. So compared to Taylor Swift, anyway. But great show tonight, William. Unfortunately, it's 3:30 or 3 a.m. here. So yeah, hit the hay and get some Z's. I respect you, Dave, because you hang out late for your time, and I know you like this channel. So thanks for being here, Dave Donnelly. And I really, truly hope when you get this record, let me know what you think of it, or even if you'd like to come up here, show your copy, and we can have. I mean, I'm still learning about her, so maybe by that time we can give you guys a good little overview on my new discovery here. Beverly Kenny. I didn't ask at Archives, Del Shannon. Oh, maybe. Okay, I will check your channel out again. I think I just subbed you, Christopher. But if you've done that video already, I'll go check it out. So, but anyways, guys, that's my little trip. I love road trips, and it's like I'm addicted to the game. I'm addicted to the hunt. Like I said, I think I'm the hardest record digger in Omaha, and I love bargain bins, guys. What can I say? I'm Captain Save-A-Ho of the bargain bin. Gotta love it. Anyway, so like I said, before we close out, Troll Stream coming up April 1st. Everyone go hit the like button, notification bell. We're going to have a fun time again. Also, to anyone new here, Bargain Babe 2026 January was Lynn Anderson. February was Jackie DeShannon. March, we got Barbara Mandrell. Coming up April, Bargain Babe is going to be Sandy Warner. So make sure you sub the channel if you're new here. I'm going to take you out. And what's great about this, I don't know, I get a free calendar every month. All you can really have to do is just like put your calendar next to your record. I don't need to be doing this whole, we don't need to really make it an official thing. Anyway, Arnie hanging out here. My bag and total commitment are, Del Shannon. Thank you. My Bag by Del Shannon. Like, if you're gonna, whoever reviews Further Adventure of Charles Westover, if you don't talk about My Bag, you can't have Further Adventures of Charles Westover unless you talk about the album My Bag. It is that too, where Del Shannon sort of, you start to wonder if Del Shannon is more influenced by his peers than, I think that could be very true. He had Tom Petty produce a whole album for him. So there you go. Anyways, guys, it's been a long episode. I've talked a lot about some records. I hope you've enjoyed being here. I certainly have enjoyed shooting the shit with you guys as always. And cheers. And we'll see you next time. Another thing I want to do is when Rob has his auctions, I do want to start spinning some tunes for you guys. So, but until then, thanks. It's been a great Thursday. We'll see you next time. All right, guys. Fritz, I'm $1. Any newcomers to the show, David Donnelly. Shout out to so, and we'll catch you maybe Saturday night.